The Gemara continues on the bottom of Daf Beis and Mid Beis, the last few words, discussing the subject of Oir. When it says in the Mishnah, Oir l'Arba Asar, so we had the machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. What does this refer to? Is Oir Nagi, is it light, daytime? Or is Oir night, the evening of Yudalit? So here the Gemara brings another few proofs to the pshat of the word Oir. Zakta Gemara, Masiv Mar Zutra. It says in a Mishnah, in Masechta Idiyos, Hamapeles Oir L'Shmainim, a woman that miscarried on the night going into Shmainim Ve'echad, in the 81st day of birth. So what it's talking about over here is a woman that gives birth to an akeva. So after 80 days, she has to bring a carbon chatos and a carbon oila. How about if within those 80 days she miscarries and now she has to bring the karbonis for the baby she had, and besides that she miscarried and therefore there's also a chiyuv to bring a second carbon. So here's the halacha: if she miscarries within the first 80 days, so she doesn't have to bring a second carbon for that miscarriage. Because it's within those first 80 days, it's considered to be within that time period of the first birth. And within that time period, there's another halacha as well, that any blood that a woman sees in that time period is called dam toyar. She doesn't make her tameh. Doesn't make her tameh, and any additional miscarriage, there's no additional karbanos she has to bring. After 80 days, the blood she sees would make her tameh, and she would be chayav to bring an additional carbon as well. The question is, what happens if she miscarried exactly, not the 81st day, but the night between the 80th day and the 81st day? So on that night, it's already after 80 days. But on the other hand, though, she can't bring her carbon that she's bringing for the first birth until tomorrow, until the 81st day. So do I say that because it's already after 80 days, so now that's a separate miscarriage that she'll have to bring separate carbonis for? Or do I say, since it's still at night and it's not yet the 81st day where she could bring the carbon, so therefore this will be included in the carbon that's brought for the first birth? So it's a machlokes, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and this is one of the examples where Beis Shammai is lenient and Beis Hillel is machmer. Let's see. Says the Mishnah, Beis Shammai poitrim mikarbon. In such a case, Beis Shammai says that you'll be potter from a carbon, from an additional carbon that is, uBeis Hillel mechayven. We started yesterday. We were supposed to start today, but we started yesterday. So, as a recording, you can catch up from the first half. So the Gemara here is discussing the subject of the word Oir. What does the word Oir mean? Does Oir mean nighttime or does Oir mean daytime? So in this Mishnah, there's a proof to the fact that Oir means nighttime, because it uses here the term Oir l'shmainim ve'echad, that she miscarried on the day, or the night that is, the night going into the 81st day. So Beis Shammai says you potter from a carbon, and Beis Hillel mechayven, and Beis Hillel says you chayev. Amrulam Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel asks Beis Shammai, Ma'ishna Oir shmainim ve'echad, miyayim shmainim ve'echad. What's the difference if she miscarries on the 81st day or the night going into the 81st day? We always know that the night and the day are one day. They're connected to each other. It's the 24-hour period of a day in Yiddishkeit starts from the night. So what should be the difference if she miscarried on the night before or during the day? Another question Beis Hillel asks, according to Rashi, this is a separate question. Im shiva loy tume lo yishva loy carbon. If the halacha regarding the night going into the 81st day after birth has the same halacha regarding if there's halacha regarding tumah, and as I mentioned before, the first 80 days, a woman that sees blood, any of that blood is not tummy, does not make her tummy. Minatayr I'm talking about, it doesn't make her tummy. After 80 days, it makes her tummy. So since the night going into the 81st day, any blood she sees then will not make her tummy, so then it should be the same regarding a carbon. If she miscarries on that 81st night, the night going into the 81st day, she should be obligated to bring a separate carbon for that. Taylor is this Mishnah that we quote from Masechta Idiyos. Why is the Gemara bringing you this up here? Midika Omri Beis Hillel Beis Shammai Ma'ishna Oir shmainim ve'echad miyayim shmainim ve'echad. Beis Hillel is questioning Beis Shammai. What difference is there between Oir shmainim ve'echad and Yayim shmainim ve'echad? What do I see from this? Shma mina Oir ortuhu. The expression, the word Oir in this case, even though the translation of the word Oir means light, it means night, because we're contrasting Oir to Yayim. Yayim is day and Oir is the night before. Shmamino. So this is another proof to the fact that when it says in the Masechta here, Oir l'Arba Asar, the time of B'dikas Chametz is at the night before, the night going into 14th of Nisan. Another raya the Gemara brings from a Mishnah, Meisvei Yochel, I would think, and this is a halacha b'negeya to the length of time that you can eat the karbanis. There's the length of time you can eat kachim kalim, and there's the length of time that you can eat kachim. We say this every morning in the karbanis, right before we start Haidu. So there's, for example, a carbon taida, which you can eat one day and one night, and the kachim kalim, which you can eat shnei yomim v'layla echad, 2 days and a night. So this Braisa here will discuss this halacha. Yochel, I would think, that the night going into the third day after you brought your carbon, you could also eat your carbon then. So if you brought your carbon on Sunday, we're talking about Monday night. I would think that you could eat your carbon even Monday night as well. In other words, that's the night going into the Tuesday, into the third day. And vidinu, and I would say that I can learn it out in the following way. Zvachim nachalam liyoyim echad. Those karbanis, for example, as I mentioned, the carbon taida, you could eat only 1 day and 1 night. Shlamim nachalim l'shnei yomim. And there's the carbon shlamim that you could eat for 2 days and a night. Ma'ala halan, just like by the carbon taida that's eaten for 1 day and a night, laila acharayim, you eat it the day of the carbon, and then the night following. So the night comes after the day. Afkan, so I would think that over here when it comes to 2 days and a night, it's the same thing. Laila acharayim, the night following the second day, you're also allowed to eat from this carbon. Tamad Laima, so the pasuk says no. By Yom Zivchachem, the day that the carbon is brought, Yeyachel, you can eat it. Umi Mocharas, and on the next day, V'hanaisar ad Yom, and what's left over until the next day, it has to be burnt. So we learn out from this pasuk, Ba'oid Yomu Nechal. It's only the next day after the carbon, while it's day, could you eat it. But you cannot eat it in the evening, going into the third day from when the carbon is brought. So the Braisa continues, Yochel Yisarif Miyad. So I would think, now after the second day, after the carbon, if you didn't finish eating your carbon until that evening, that you would have to burn it right away. In other words, it would be considered to be nicer. It's leftover and you have to burn it immediately, even before you come to the third day. You have to burn it right away at the evening. And vidinu, and again, I would learn it out from another carbon by the kachim kachim. Zvachim nechalam liyayim v'layla echad. There are those karbanis, as I mentioned, taida, and Rashi here brings also a carbon pesach that's only eaten that night. Shlomim nechalam l'shnei yomim v'layla echad, and the carbon shlomim is eaten 2 days and a night. Ma lahalan, just like the halach is regarding a carbon that's eaten the day of and the following night. So what's the halacha there? Teikef la'achila sreifa. As soon as you can't eat it anymore, you have to burn it. Immediately there's the halacha of Naisa, there's the day and the following night, and right after you can't eat it, that next morning you have to burn it. Afkan, I would think over here as well, Teikef la'achila sreifa, that you can eat it the day of the carbon, that night, the following day, and that evening you have to burn it right away. That's what I would think. Talmud Laima, the pasuk says, no, it's only the next morning, meaning on the third day of the carbon, that's when you have to burn it. On the morning and the third day, that's when you burn it, but and you do not have to burn it the night before, even though you're not allowed to eat it. So you're not allowed to eat it on the night going into the third day, but you still don't have to burn it at that point. You wait until the next morning. On the third day, only the third day of when the carbon was brought, that's when you burn it. Okay, this is the Braisa. Now why are we bringing all this up over here? Again, only to prove what the term oir means. The Braisa here says that I would think you can eat the carbon the evening going into the third day. Alma oir ortu. Again, I see the expression of oir means the night. Shmamino, this is another ayah that the term oir means night. Toshama, the Gemara brings another ayah to this. Regarding Yom Kippur, it says as follows: Oir shel Yom Kippurim, the night of Yom Kippur, the evening of Yom Kippur. Mispalel Shava Yidam Shmei Nesra, 7 brachas, Mizvada, and you say the vidui. Shachris in the morning, Mispalel Shava Yidam 7 brachas and Shmei Nesra, Mizvada, and you say vidui again. B'Musaf Mispalel Shava and Musaf again Yidam 7 brachas, Mizvada, again this vidui. B'Minche Mispalel Shava Minche Yidam 7 brachas, Mizvada, and you say vidui again. B'Arvis, the ma'ariv of Matzi Yom Kippur, mispal me'ein Shmei Nesra. You don't daven a full Shmei Nesra. Very interesting. This opinion is that the ma'ariv going into Matzi Yom Kippur, because you're fasting all day and you need to go eat, so you daven the first 3 brachas, the last 3 brachas, and the middle brachas of Shmei Nesra is all included in what Rashi brings there. We had this in the Gemara in brachas, Havinenu. You have one bracha that includes all the details of the middle brachas of Shmei Nesra. So you can go and eat and break your fast. That's the first opinion here. Rab Chanina ben Gamliel Rab Chanina ben Gamliel says the name of his fathers. No, even Matziyam Kippur, Mispal Shmei Nesra Shleimus. You have to daven the full Shmei Nesra. Mipnei shetzarech leima havdalah b'chaynan adas. Because you need to say the bracha of chaynan adas. That's the place where you could say the havdalah of Matziyam Kippur. So you have to daven the full Shmei Nesra, and of course that's the way we do it today. So what are we bringing this for? Alma, what do I see here? Oir ortuhu. I see Oir is the evening of Yom Kippur, as it was said in the beginning of this brayse. Oir shal Yom Kippurim is the evening of Yom Kippur that you daven the 7 brachas. Shmam, you know, this is another ayah.
Why so many rayas?
We'll first talk about it. Why the Gemara is bringing so many rayas. Yeah, it's not so pashut. Look, in the end of the day, the point is the word Oir means day. Oir means light. So the fact that we're saying that Oir means night is something which is the opposite of the simple translation of the word Oir. And even if in one case it says Oir, it doesn't necessarily mean that in another case it does. Here the Gemara will bring a very, very clear raya to the Zman of Bedikas Chametz, that it's at night. But the Gemara wasn't satisfied with this raya that it's about to bring. It brings all these other rayas. Let's see the last raya. This is the clearest raya of all. Tashama, the Tani de Bei Shmuel. Shmuel learned in Abraisa, Leile Arba Asa, the evening of Arba Asa, Beit Knesset Chametz later on there. You check for the Chametz by the light of a candle. So it's clear, Leile. Alma Oir Ortahu. So Oir means in the evening. Okay, so that's l'chayra the clearest raya. But the Mefarshim point out that Pnei Yeshua says that the Gemara didn't just bring this raya right at the beginning of this whole discussion and leave it at that, because it's possible there's a machlokes. In our Mishnah it says Oir Ba'asar. Shmuel learned in the Braisa Leile Ba'asar. So maybe there's a machlokes about this. The Gemara wants to be sure, and therefore brings all these rayas to point out that Oir means the evening of Yudalit. So now going back to the beginning of the Gemara, over there brought a machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, whether Oir means day or Oir means night. So now the Gemara concludes, Elo, so really they're not arguing. They never were arguing about the time of Bedikas Chametz. Bein Rav Huna, Bein Rav Yehuda, the Kula Alma Oir Ortuhu. Everybody agrees that the meaning of the word Oir is evening. Velay Pligi, they're not arguing about this. Mar Ki Asrei, one is saying according to the way the term was used in his place, Umar Ki Asrei, and another was saying the way it was used in his place. The Rav Huna, the Asrei the Rav Huna, that is, in the place where Rav Huna lived, Karu Nagi, they would refer to evening, the time of light. So Rashi here explains, as Rashi bring this, or other Mefarshim say, that the reason that what they would refer to night as the time of light, it's like the Lashon of Saginar, saying it in the positive sense, even though it's really a time which is dark. But they refer to night with the term light. And according to Rav Yehuda, in the place where Rav Yehuda lived, they refer to night as Leili, as night. But the machlokes we had in the beginning of the Gemara is not regarding the time. The time is at night. The only question is how the people refer to that time period. Fragt the Gemara, V'tane Didan. So the Tana of our Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechta. My time alekatani leili. Why does he not use the term leili? Just like the Braisa we quoted from Shmuel. Shmuel says, clear, leili arba asar. Why would the Tana of our Mishnah use the term oir? And we have to have this whole discussion here. Answers the Gemara, lishne ma'al yehu. He wants to use a more positive expression. The nokat. That's the expression, the word that he's using. Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Like Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Dam Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Lo oilam, al yotzi adam dava meguna mipiv. A person should not use a negative language or a despicable language. And what's the source for this? Shahare ikke makos of Shmaina Oisius. The Torah writes extra 8 letters, and and it doesn't want to use a negative term. Where do you see this? Shanema mina behema tahira umina behema asher einena tahira. So instead of saying behema tmeya, it says asher einena tahira. So asher einena tahira is 13 letters. Tmeya behema tmeya would be 8. It would be 5 letters. So the Torah added 8 letters just because it did not want to use the term Tmeya. So Rashi points out over here, the Gemara doesn't mean to say that if the Tana of the Mishnah would use the term Leil, Leil is a Dova Maguna. The word Leil is not a Dova Maguna. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi is talking about using the word Tmeya, which is considered to be a Dova Maguna. But we're learning from there. Just like you see that a person shouldn't say a davar meguna, that also teaches you that if you have an option to use a better, a nicer, purer language, you should use a better language. So therefore, the Mishnah uses the term oir to use a better language. There are other Rishayim that say, the Balamar says that the reason why the Tana here said specifically oir is because it's the beginning of a Masechta. When you start a new Masechta, he brings a pasuk that says Pesach Tvarecha Yar. When you open up a new subject, you should use a positive language and don't start with the word leil, start with the word oir, light. That's Pesach Tvarecha Yar. However, the Ravid argues with him because he says, look, the Gemara brought so many different cases where the Tana uses the term oir and it's not at the beginning of a Masechta. So that can't be the reason. So he says the reason is because the mitzvah of Bedikas Chametz is to be done when it's still a little bit light outside. You do Bedikas Chametz right at Seisa Kechavim where it's still some light. You're supposed to do it as soon as you come home, and you don't wait until later in the evening because you don't want to forget to do the mitzvah. So you do it right when you get home, and therefore it says oir to tell you it's taken night. Oir means night, but it also means that there's still a little bit of light outside. Therefore the Tana used the term oir over here. So now the Gemara is going to go further into this subject about not saying a davar meguna. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi brought the source from the pasuk that it says by the Mabul, Behema she'enenet tahira. There's going to be other places where the Gemara points out you find in Torah that it doesn't use the usual term and it switches the words, it adds letters in order not to say a davar meguna. Rav Papa says we find the Torah added Teisha, 9 letters. Shenema ki yeh v'cha ish asher lo yeh tahir mikre laila, a man that will not be pure at night. So instead of saying ish tamei, it says asher lo yeh tahir. It's additional 9 letters. And as Rashi points out, as we'll see in the Gemara, even if the word tahir is spelled without a vav, you're at in the words asher lo yeh tahir, that's 9 letters more than tamei. Ravina says eser. No, it's 10 letters more because vav de tahir. The word tahir is spelled with a vav and therefore it's 10 letters more. Ravacha Bayakiv Ama Sheish Esra. You find a place in the Torah where it adds 16 letters. Shenema ki Oma Mikrehu, and then the pasuk says Bilti Tahirhu ki Loi Tahir. Instead of the pasuk saying ki Oma Mikre Tamehu, doesn't say Tame, but it says Bilti Tahirhu ki Loi Tahir, and the Torah adds 16 letters more than it should have.
But we find that the Torah does use the term Tameya.
Correct. We'll come back to that in the Gemara soon. The Gemara is going to bring that up. But first, the Gemara brings another statement from Rabbi Shmuel. Tanya de Rabbi Shmuel, we learned, Rabbi Shmuel said, a person should use the purest language possible. So before, Rabbi Shua ben Levi was saying, don't use a lashon meguna, don't use a despicable language. He's talking about the fact that you should use a lashon nekiya. Shaharei bezav karoi merkav. A zav, which has an emission and he's tamei. So when the Torah talks about how he makes things tamei, it refers to the male as merkav. If he rides on something, he makes it tamei. Ubi isha, when it comes to a woman, the Torah does not use the term merkav. Karai maishav. The Torah refers to when she sits as a maishav, a place that she sits. So the point is, as Rashi says, the Torah stays away from using a term that refers to the woman splitting her legs when she's riding. It wants to use a cleaner language, so it uses the term maishav. So we see that you should always use a lashon nekiya. Va'aymer, another proof to this is, it says in the pasuk, Vatifchar lashon arumim, and you choose the language of the wise ones, of the clever ones. So there's a certain language, people that are wise speak in a cleaner language. Va'aymer, another source is, V'das sfasai bar milelo, that the das, the knowledge of a person comes out on his lips and he should speak a clear, pure language. So the Gemara now asks, why does this statement, this Braisa, bring all of these sources? Why does he bring a few sources to this? Because if you might say, maybe only the Torah speaks in a pure language, but it doesn't mean that anything outside of Torah Shebiksav has to be that pure. The Rabbanan, when they teach Mishnayos and so on, maybe it doesn't have to be that way. So he brings another pasuk, Vatifchar lashon arumim. The clever ones, the Chachamim, they speak in a pure language. Maybe this is only when you're teaching Torah. In any other subject that you speak about, mundane matters, it's not necessary to use a clean language. Therefore, Vayim brings a third pasuk, V'das sfasai barer milelu, referring to any time a person speaks that it should use the purest language. Now the Gemara asks, is this actually true? That in the Torah there's no pasuk where when it refers to an isha, it doesn't use the term merkav, that she's riding. Or be isha like sivba merkav, v'haksiv, there's a pasuk that says, is this in this week's parsha? Vatakam, last week's parasha, and 2 weeks ago. Vatakam Rivka v'narisel, and Rivka and her maidens got up. Vatirkavna alagmalim, and they rode on a camel. So it says the term vatirkavna, that they were riding on a camel, even regarding a woman. And it says the Gemara, Hasa mishum biasusa de gemalim, when you're riding on a camel and you're so high up, so over there, the only way to ride is you can't sit with both feet on one side. You have to split your feet, and therefore the Torah says this even regarding a woman. The Torah is not going to ride something which is not the way it happened. When you ride a camel, vatirkavna, that's the way they ride it. Regarding Zav, the Torah wants to tell you the halacha of Tumah, so it's not talking about an incident that happened, so it stays away of the term merkav by a woman. But not when it talks about something that happened. This is the only way you could ride a camel. So Urchi, this is usual custom. Frakta Gemara another place. Moshe took his wife and children, and they rode on a donkey. So why does it use the term vayarkivim if they're only on a donkey? Answers the Gemara, Hasam mishum banav urchuhu. He was taking his children with him. And it uses the term rechiva, riding, because of the children. Some Mefarshim say that Rashi is not good as the word urchuhu, because Rashi here says that the term rechiva is being used regarding his children. Another place, she was riding on a donkey. This is Avigail that went out to David HaMelech to give him food. Originally, David HaMelech had sent people to her to eat by her, and they didn't serve her. And then she went to bring food to David HaMelech. So it says there the term recheves. And it says the Gemara, Hasam mishum be'asusa de lelia urchuhu. In that case, she was riding at night. And therefore, because of the fear of the nighttime, she was riding with her split legs. Wasn't because of she was afraid of the night. She was afraid of David HaMelech. She was going to bring David HaMelech food after they did not serve him the food, or his messengers. So she was afraid of David HaMelech. Others say biasusa de David namila, she wasn't afraid of David, but mishum biasusa dahar, she was riding on mountains. So therefore, she had to ride on the donkey in the way a person usually rides. The har ikke, that's the reason why she was afraid. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to the question that you asked before. What did we say? That in the Torah, it uses the term einena tahira, bilti tar. The Torah stays away from the term tame. Frek the Gemara, is that true? By raise mi loik siv tame. Does it not use the term tame in the Torah? Many, many times. It says in the Torah the word tame. Answers the Gemara, Ella kol heicha dechiyadadi nino. So now here the Gemara is mechadish as follows. Whenever you have a pure language and an impure language, and the amount of words would be the same, mishtoi b'lashon nekiya. So choose a pure language, because using the pure or impure language is the same amount of words, so use a pure language. But kol heicha, the nefishin mili, if any time using a pure language, you'll have to use a more longer term, you have to add words or add letters, mishtoi b'lashon kitzara. It's actually better to use a shorter expression, less words. You should always teach Torah, and you should use the shortest expression, the least words or even letters possible. So therefore the Torah says a lashon of tamei many, many times, because it wants to teach in the shortest way possible, not to use a longer stretched out expression. Okay, so now the maskana of the Gemara here, according to the Marsha's pshat in this Gemara, is that in a situation where you have a choice, either to use a cleaner language and use a longer expression, or to use a shorter language, but not use such a pure expression, they're both equally as good. You can choose whichever one you want. There's a maila in using a lashon kitzara, because when you teach in a lashon kitzara, the halacha will be remembered and understood better, and there's a maila in teaching a lashon nekiya. You can do either one, and that's why sometimes the Torah writes lashon of einena tahira, to teach you that it's a mile of saying lashon nekiya, and sometimes the Torah writes tameya to teach you the mile of saying lashon kitzara. They're both equally as good. That's the Mashras pshat in this Gemara. Gemara concludes here this inyan. V'chol heiche dechiya dadi ninu mishtoi b'lashon kavod. Is it true that any time you have two expressions that are equal, the Torah will choose a more honorable expression, a more kavodic expression? V'harecheves v'yoisheves dechiya dadi ninu. Going back to what we mentioned before, recheves, the term recheves, riding, and yesheves, they are the same amount. It's one word. It's the same word. V'ka'ama recheves, and nevertheless it says recheves, even though you're not shortening the word. Says the Gemara, no, recheves ksiv. It actually says recheves without a vav, so you actually are shortening the word, which is very interesting. When you say the word recheves and yesheves, the pronunciation of the word is the exact same. Roi cheves, yesheves, whether it's with a vav or without a vav. So the Maharsha says the chiddush of the Gemara right now is even in writing. When you write, sometimes you write in a shorter way of writing. That itself, includes even when you write. Instead of writing things in a longer way, write things concise, short, so the one that will see it will remember it better.
Doesn't the Rebbe bring a Sikha that Legabe?
Yes. So the Rebbe says in the Sikha that the Gemara's question over here, that the Gemara should have said, that the Torah says the lashon of Tamei. Why does the Gemara wait until the end to ask this question? The Gemara should have asked this question in the beginning, right when it starts off. It says maybe 100 times. It says in the Torah the term Tamei. The Gemara waits all the way to the end to ask this question, and the Gemara asks, doesn't it say in the Torah Tamei, as if there's some kind of a suffix about this? So the Rebbe explains that this whole discussion and the whole sugi over here, that a person should use a clean language in Torah, is only if there's a certain story that's being said, or something that's being said that's not negei lahalacha b'payil. When you're paskening a halacha b'payil, you have to use the clearest, the most direct language, that there should be no mistakes. So regarding most times in the Torah where it says Tamei, the Gemara didn't have any question. When the Gemara here asks the question, Mi like siv Tamei, the Gemara is asking, there still is a few times in the Torah where it uses the term Tamei even when it's not negei halacha. And that was the main question of the Gemara. But otherwise, the Gemara understood that in halacha, you have to paskin in the most clearest fashion. You have to say it the way it is without beating around the bush. Now the Gemara is going to bring a few different incidents of Tanaim and stories with Amiroim that happened regarding the using a pure language. There were two students that were sitting and learning by Rav. Chadama, one commented to Rav, Shavisinon, Hoshmaita, this sugi that we learned today made me so tired, like a dovaracher that's tired, like a pig, like a tired pig. That's how tired I am. That's the expression he used. I became so tired like a tired goat. He didn't speak to this individual that used this expression, this negative expression, comparing himself to a dover acher, so he didn't speak to him. And other Mefarshim say that the Gairis in the Gemara, he didn't speak to him for 30 days. Okay?
But we used like a dover acher.
Yeah, exactly. That itself is the reason, yeah. Another incident, there were these two students, they were sitting in front of Hillel. One of those students was Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai. Others say that this story happened happened not in front of Hillel, but it happened in front of Rebbe. One of them was Rabbi Yechanan. So they were asking a shaila in halacha, and this shaila is benegayet to when you are cutting grapes or cutting olives. So the halacha is that in order for any fruits to become tamei, it has to have contact with liquid. Only then does it become susceptible to tumah. So the question is, when you cut the grapes and there's some juice, some of the wine that comes out from the grapes, does that make it susceptible to tumah? The answer is yes. But when it comes to olives, it does not make it susceptible to tumah, even if there's some oil that squeezes out of the olives. So he was asking the question, what's the reason? What's the difference? Why when you cut the olives, even if there's oil that comes out, Beitzrin, sorry, you're right. Beitzrin is the grapes. When you cut the grapes and the wine comes out, betara, so it's considered to be tahir. It doesn't make it susceptible to tumah. Ve'ein maiskin betara. But when you cut the olives and the oil comes out, it does make it tumah. So it's the opposite than what I said before. The wine will not make it susceptible to tumah, but the oil that comes out does make it susceptible to tumah. That's the way he asked the question. V'chad the other asked the question in the following language. Why by grapes is it done and the wine comes out and you still tahir? And when the oil comes out, it makes it susceptible to tumah. So he used the term tumah. The other student didn't want to use the term tumah. He just said, ein maiskin betara. So Omar, whether it was Hillel or whether it was Rebbe, he said, Muftach ani bezeh, I'm sure about this individual that used a cleaner language, Shemaira Rabbi Yisrael, that he's going to become a Rav to teach halachas for the Yidden. And not a long time passed, Rabbi Yisrael, and he came to teach and to paskan halachas for Yidden. So that's the simple pshat of the Gemara, that it refers to the one that used a cleaner language. However, the Ran disagrees. The Ran says that this story is a raya that you're supposed to use a clearer and shorter language. And the one that used the term Tameh, he's the one that became the Meira Rav Yisrael, because he saw, this is a Rav. A Rav speaks clearly, directly, concisely. He's the one that's going to be the Rav. Hanat Lasakani, there were 3 Kayanim. Chad Amar, so all the Kayanim, of course, got a portion of the Lechem Apanim in the Beis HaMikdash. Chad Amar Lahu, one said to his friends, Higiyani Kapul, I got an amount from the Lechem Apanim, the size of a bean. Chad Amar Higiyani Kizayis, I got the amount of a Kizayis. Chad Amar, third one said to his friends, Higiyani Kiznov Halta, I got the size of the tail of a lizard. So he used such an expression regarding the lechem upon him. Batku achrav, they examined him, and matzu by shemetz psul, they found a psul in him. Rashi says the psul was that he was a chalal, he wasn't a kosher kain. Fact the Gemara, how could they inspect a person just because of such an expression? Once a person is serving by the mizbeach, we don't go ahead and inspect him. So if he was a kain that was doing the avodah, why would they inspect him just for this? So the Gemara says, you're right. One answer, the Gemara says, they didn't find him to be a chalal, to be pasul, they found a certain arrogance. Shachatz means arrogance. They found a certain arrogance that he shouldn't be doing the Aveda because of his arrogance. That's what it means. However, another answer is, Shani Hasam the Iyu the Ara Nafshe. Usually, a kain that serves in the Beis HaMikdash, we don't just go ahead and inspect him. But over here, he used such a kind of expression, so he deserved to be inspected, and they found a psul in him. Another story where you could see from the words that a person says regarding who the person is. Hahu Arma, there was a guy that have a salik. He would go to Yerushalayim, v'achal pesachim b'Yerushalayim, and he would disguise himself as a yid, and he would join and bring the carbon pesach, and he would eat with the yidden. Amar, this guy says, Ksiv in the Torah it says, Kol beneicha la'yechal bay. A guy shouldn't eat. Kol ara la'yechal bay. If you don't have a bris, you shouldn't eat. V'ana hokachilne mishufri shufri. And I'm being served the finest of the carbon pesach. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira heard this, and he said to this guy, Mika safalach ma'alya, are they giving you from the best part of the carbon? Are they giving you from the tail of the lamb to eat? So now the tail is something that you don't eat. The tail has to be brought only in the mizbeach. So why was he telling him this? He wanted him to go and ask for the tail, and then they'll discover who he is. So the Marshal over here both say that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, when he heard him saying, and I'm getting from the best of the best, he understood that this guy thought that when it says in the Torah, Kol beneicha la'yechal bay, that a guy is not allowed to eat from the best of the best. He's allowed to eat from a carbon pesach, but he's only not allowed to get from the best of the best. And I'm getting from the best of the best. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is telling him, no, you're a guy, and they're being careful not to give you from the best of the best. They're only giving you from the tail. From everything, but not from the tail. Go and ask for the best of the best, and you'll see they won't give you. So what happened? So he goes up to Eretz Yisrael. Amar lei, he said they don't give me. Kisalkis lahasam. So when you go to Yerushalayim, Eimeluhu, tell them Safali ma'alya, give me from the tail. Kisalik. So when he went to Yerushalayim, Amaluhu me'alya Safali, give me from the tail. Amrulei, they told him, Alya legavaya salka, the tail that's brought in the mizbeach. Amrulei, so they said to him, Man amal lachachi, who's the one that told you to ask for the tail? They saw something's fishy with this guy. Amalahu Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. It was Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that told this to me. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, as we'll see here in the Gemara, was living far away in Chutz La'aretz in a place called Tzivin, and he wasn't Eile Regel. He didn't come, and therefore he had to send this guy with this message that he should get uncovered. Amru, so they said, my haida, come on, what's going on here? Why would Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira tell this fellow to ask for the tail? Batku basrei, so they were baidik, they looked into this person, vashkechu dar mahu, they uncovered him, he's a guy, v'katlu, and they killed him. Shalchal Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they sent a message to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Shalom lach Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, peace to you Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, da'at ben Etzivin, you're living far away in Etzivin, u'mitzudascha prusa b'Yerushalayim, and your net is spread out all the way to Yerushalayim. So there are two things that the Mefarshim discuss in this Gemara. One of them Taisus brings up right over here. Why is it that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira wasn't Oile Regel? Why didn't he go to the Beis HaMikdash together with all Yidden and bring the Korban Pesach as well? So Taisus says a few reasons. One of the reasons he says is he was old, he couldn't go. Another reason Taisus says, Lehoya lekarka. He didn't own a piece of land. And if you don't own a piece of land, you're not obligated to be Oile Regel. And this Taisus is a huge chiddush. It's a famous Taisus because it comes out from this Taisus that if you don't own a piece of land, not only are you not obligated to be Oile Regel, you're not obligated to bring a Korban Pesach as well. Because we're talking here about Pesach, that he didn't go to bring the Korban Pesach. So there's a huge discussion about this. Because what Taisus says has no other source other than what it says here in this Taisus. Where do you see that a person has to own a piece of land to be chayiv in bringing the Korban Pesach? What's the source for this? Not only that, the Yidden were in the Midbar. The second year after they came out of Mitzrayim, they brought a Korban Pesach. They didn't own any piece of land. Afterwards, they didn't bring a Korban Pesach because they didn't have a bris milah, whatever the reason is. But l'chayra, there's no source for this. That's a very big chiddush. There's a famous Taisus to that. Then there's another discussion in Mefarshim regarding the fact that they killed this guy. Why did they kill him? They shouldn't have given him the Korban Pesach, but he's chayiv misa. So there are different answers given. The most basic answer that's given is that he was a ganav. He was taking something that wasn't belonging to him. And Geneva is one of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and by a guy, he's over the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he's chayiv misa. So therefore they killed him. The next story we see regarding the language that a person uses. So over here they uncovered this guy with what he asked, with where he spoke. So that's why it was brought into our sugya here. Rav Kahana Chalash. Rav Kahana was very not well. Shadrua Rabbana Rabbi Yeshua Berei de Ravidi. They sent Rabbi Yeshua Berei de Ravidi to go and visit him. Amrulei Zil Bedoik Mai Dine. Go see what his condition is. Also, he came, and he found that he already had passed away. So he tore kriya, but he put the garment that he tore in behind that they shouldn't see it. And he was crying, and he came back to the people that sent him. They told him, they asked him, did he pass away? I didn't say that. I didn't. You didn't hear it from me. And the Gemara brings a pasuk, a person that is sharing not good news is a fool. A person should hold himself back of sharing not good news. Another incident similar, Yochanan and Chakuka, Nafik Lakaryasa, Yochanan and Chakuka went out to the villages to see regarding the produce that was growing there, or regarding the grain that was growing, how it turned out to be in that season. Kiyasa, when he came back, Amrulei, they told him, Chitin Nasi Yafais, did the wheat grow nicely? So he told them, the barley grew nicely. Yeah, they should have understood that the wheat did not grow well. So they told him, why are you telling us about the barley? Tell this the horses and the donkey that eat barley. Why are you telling us? The horses eat barley and hay. What should have he said? He's trying to use a clean language. They told him, tell this to the horses. So what should have he said? So he should have said, last year the wheat grew nicely. Inami, he could have used adoshim nasi yafais. The adoshim, lentils grew nicely. He didn't have to bring up food that's eaten only by animals. But he should use a clean language. You don't have to give bad news. That's what you learn out from there.